Welcome to Adding Years, your roadmap to longevity, a playbook for living healthier and longer. I'm Josie. Along with being a certified personal trainer and longevity enthusiast, I am also a data and AI executive with 4 master's degrees, including one in AI from Johns Hopkins. In each episode, I'll share simple technology and AI-backed strategies with practical steps that you can use to build your own longevity roadmap. I'm not a doctor or medical professional, so be sure to check with your physician before trying anything we discuss on the show. Welcome back. Today, we're taking a hard look at one of the most visible trends in longevity, biometric trackers. You've seen them everywhere. A ring that knows your sleep, a strap that judges your recovery, and a watch that tells you how to breathe. We're officially living in an era where your wrist, your finger, or even your mattress has opinions about your health. But here's the catch. We've reached data saturation. Between devices like Whoop, Aura, Apple Watch, Garmin, Fitbit, the Samsung Galaxy Watch, and smart mattress covers like 8 Sleep, you can measure almost everything. Like your heart rate variability, breathing, temperature, sleep staging, readiness score, stress levels, and even cuffless blood pressure estimates. The question isn't, can we measure it anymore? It's, what are we doing with all of that data? And that's where today's episode begins. I personally use 3 of these systems daily: the Whoop, Aura Ring, and 8 Sleep. So I live in the overlap between science, hype, and real-world fiction. Some mornings they all agree, great recovery, go crush your day. Other days, Whoop flushes yellow, Aura mutters about some temperature drift, and 8 Sleep blames circadian misalignment, which is code for you stayed up too late scrolling. The promise of these tools is enormous: more personal awareness, earlier detection of stress or illness, and smarter training. But so is the potential for data anxiety, when your device tells you you're tired before your brain has even had coffee. So, in classic Adding Years fashion, we're going to clear the fog. By the end of this episode, you'll know how these devices actually measure, how accurate they are, how to use them effectively, and how to make them serve your life instead of running it. We'll use these 3 guiding questions. First, how do biometric trackers measure our signals and how accurate are they? We'll peek inside the sensors and the algorithms that turn light, motion, and temperature into the numbers you see every morning. Second, how do we use them well, not just collecting data, but driving real behavior change and better longevity outcomes? You'll get a practical playbook and an AI-assisted workflow that turns dashboards into daily decisions. And third, do these devices create helpful accountability, or are they just adding pressure to an already busy life? Because if optimization becomes another stressor, we've missed the point of longevity entirely. I'll walk you through the mechanisms, the evidence, and the guardrails. Then we'll build a smart but sane approach to tracking your body without losing your mind. By the end, you'll know which signals truly matter, how to read them without obsession, and how to turn micro insights into habits that actually extend health span. So let's zoom out for a minute. Why are biometric trackers suddenly everywhere, and why do they matter for longevity? It comes down to a simple truth: you can't optimize what you can't see. For decades, we relied on once-a-year snapshots, a physical, a handful of labs, and maybe a quick blood pressure reading at the pharmacy. But the real story of health happens between those visits, in your daily recovery, your sleep cycles, your stress load, and how well your body adapts to change. And that's what modern trackers finally make visible. They've evolved from step counters into what I'd call continuous feedback labs. Small sensors quietly listen to microsignals your body sends all day and night: your heart rate variability, breathing, temperature, and motion. Software translates those signals into composite scores: your recovery, readiness, and sleep quality. They're shorthand for how well you're adapting to life. And here's the core idea. Longevity isn't about eliminating stress. It's about reading it and responding to it better. Biometric trackers give you the data to do exactly that, to see whether you're adapting or just compensating. And many groups of people benefit from this type of tracking, like people training for performance or recovery, because the balance between strain and recovery applies as much to executives and parents as it does to athletes. Or people experimenting with lifestyle interventions like sauna, cold exposure, or supplements, because you can see if those changes nudge HRV, sleep, or resting heart rate in the right direction. And really, anyone managing stress, fatigue, or sleep issues, because these devices often reveal patterns that explain why your energy feels off, sometimes before you even consciously notice. There is a flip side. When every morning starts with a score, it's easy to forget that you're not being graded, you're being guided. Today is about reclaiming that perspective. We'll look at how these devices actually measure, what's reliable, what's fuzzy, and which numbers matter for long-term health. We'll talk about using the data without drowning in it, aligning training, recovery, and sleep habits around meaningful patterns instead of isolated values. And we'll face the emotional side head-on, accountability without anxiety. With that framing in place, let's lift the hood on the technology. If you've ever wondered how a ring or strap can estimate sleep, stress, or recovery, the answer is part elegant engineering and part statistical inference. These devices don't read your body the way a hospital monitor does. They translate light, temperature, and motion into health signals using algorithms that have steadily improved over the past decade. Nearly every modern wearable relies on a technology called photoplethysmography, PPG for short. Your device shines light, green, red, or infrared into the skin and then measures how that light scatters as blood pulses through tiny capillaries. And from that pattern, the device derives your heart rate, and from the timing difference between beats, your heart rate variability. And PPG doesn't work alone. Accelerometers detect movement, gyroscopes track orientation, and temperature sensors pick up subtle circadian shifts. Together, these streams feed models that estimate sleep staging, recovery, and readiness. Let's take a deep dive into some of these signals. The heart rate is the easy one. At rest, modern devices are extremely accurate, usually within a couple of beats per minute of a chest strap ECG. However, during motion, especially fast arm movements or during strength training, the optical sensors can struggle a bit. Heart rate variability is a little bit more sensitive. It measures the millisecond gaps between heartbeats, the tiny changes that reflect your autonomic nervous system's flexibility. PPG-based HRV aligns well with ECG trends, even though absolute numbers can vary with motion, tattoos, or skin tone. And for most people, I would think, direction matters more than a single number. If your 7-day HRV trend climbs, recovery and resilience are likely improving. If it's drifting down and resting heart rate is drifting up, your body is probably asking for rest. Sleep tracking is heavily inferred. Wearables don't read brainwaves the way that a lab does. They infer sleep from heart rate dynamics, HRV patterns, temperature, and motion. Total sleep time is typically accurate within about 20 minutes of gold standard polysomnography. Sleep efficiency tracks well too, but sleep stage estimates for light, deep, and REM sleep is a little bit more modest, but usually good enough to spot patterns like caffeine or alcohol disrupting deep sleep or travel shifting your cycles. For overnight heart rate and HRV, Whoop and Aura are particularly well validated. Temperature sensing is about detecting change, not measuring the absolutes. Aura, Whoop, and Apple Watch track skin temperature shifts, and 8 Sleep reads the thermal changes through the mattress. A deviation of even a few tenths of a degree can flag circadian changes, hormonal cycles, overtraining, or even early illness. You won't use these as a clinical thermometer, but the trends are meaningful and in research remarkably consistent. For respiratory rate, devices estimate breaths per minute from oscillations in the PPG signal or micro movements captured by the accelerometers. And at rest, the accuracy is pretty high. Oxygen saturation sensors, when present, use red and infrared light to estimate your blood oxygen level. They're good at rest, less reliable in motion or cold fingers. Consider them your wellness insights, not diagnostic measurements. The movement data underpins activity, strain, and energy metrics. Accelerometers and gyroscopes quantify how long and how hard you move. For example, Whoop's strain or Garmin's training load or Fitbit's active zone minutes, these are all proxies for cardiovascular demand, useful for pacing your day and balancing workload. And some devices add rhythm monitoring. The Whoop 5.0 MG includes a heart screener that records a single lead ECG cleared by the FDA for arterial fibrillation screening. Apple Watch does the same, and Samsung's ECG feature is cleared in the US as well. On the flip side, as of this recording, most of the cuffless blood pressure estimates are still wellness grade. They should be labeled clearly as directional insights, not clinical readings. So that's the measurement layer. What does the evidence say about accuracy? Over the past 5 years, validation studies have matured a lot, and the consensus looks like this. Resting heart rate is rock solid. Exercise heart rate varies by activity, but for steady cardio, the correlation is good. HRV is reliable for trends, especially at night, but the absolute value can differ from device to device, so pick one ecosystem and stick with it. Sleep duration is strong, and sleep stages are informative but also directional. Oxygen saturation is fine when you're still, and cuffless blood pressure is still an early stage coaching tool, not a medical measurement. In other words, use these devices to see direction and patterns and don't make clinical decisions off of them. The more interesting question is whether this feedback changes behavior. And here, the answer is very encouraging. When people see recovery or sleep quality, they self-correct faster. Over months, users tend to walk more, sleep a bit longer, lower their resting heart rate, and lift their HRV baselines, especially when they check recovery scores regularly and adjust training or bedtime accordingly. Visibility creates accountability, and accountability shapes habits. And there's even a longevity bridge forming. Wearables track leading indicators of aging, cardiovascular fitness, recovery efficiency, sleep quality, and stress regulation. Higher baseline HRV associates with lower cardiovascular event risk. Lower resting heart rate and consistent sleep efficiency relate to better long-term outcomes. We don't yet have 30-year wearable datasets, but the direction is promising. These signals seem to mirror biological age shifts before overt disease appears. Now let's set some boundaries because not all numbers are created equal. Most wearable features live under the FDA's general wellness umbrella. They're designed to support fitness and well-being, not diagnose disease. A few features cross into the clinical terrain, like those ECG rhythm checks, and they've earned clearance for that specific use. Everything else should be treated as guidance. Trends are the truth. Outliers deserve context, not panic. And speaking of context, algorithms evolve. Companies constantly recalibrate their readiness or recovery models as they gather more data. If your score shifts after an update, you may be seeing new weighting, not physiological change. And that's another reason to anchor on trends rather than single numbers. And then there's privacy. All the major brands encrypt your health data, and many contribute anonymized insights into their research. But it's worth checking your settings and exporting your data periodically so you own a personal copy. Your data is valuable, so make sure you keep your version of it. And let's talk mindset, because the biggest determinant of whether trackers help or harm isn't in the sensor accuracy. It's really how you relate to the numbers. When people treat the data as feedback, they feel more motivated and more at ease. But when they see it as a grade, the stress goes up and then the autonomy goes down. The reframe is simple. See patterns, not scores. Look at 7 to 14-day averages, not last night's blip. Pair data with your context. Did you travel, train hard, or eat late? And always trust your perception first. If you feel good, you probably are, even if your tracker disagrees for a day. And that's the deep dive. We covered what devices measure, how reliable they are, where the regulation sits, how algorithms shifts, and how mindset keeps you healthy instead of anxious. In the next part, we'll turn technology into practice. We'll build a smart, simple playbook that uses 1 or 2 key signals to guide your day. Then we'll layer in an AI workflow that replaces a dozen graphs with a single sentence of context. And we'll keep this whole thing humane, useful, sustainable, and friendly to real-life usage. So now let's move into practice. First, we want to start by choosing an ecosystem, not a gadget. Almost all top devices measure the same fundamentals. What changes is where your data lives and how you like to see it. If your focus is training and recovery, Whoop and Garmin feel like a good home base. If you care more about sleep and readiness, Aura and 8 Sleep make it effortless. And if you want an all-purpose companion, Apple Watch or Fitbit will meet you wherever you are. Pick one primary device for daily wear, and if you want more context, a secondary device that fills a gap. 2 is plenty. More than that creates a noise you probably don't need. Next, establish an anchor metric. This is the single signal that guides 80% of your decisions. If you train regularly, let HRV be your compass. If energy and cognition are your targets, watch sleep efficiency. If you're balancing stress and recovery, resting heart rate is simple but powerful. The rest of the dashboard is just context. And before you start, set your review rhythm. For example, mornings you take a quick glance at readiness or recovery and last night's sleep duration. Once a week, review 7-day trends for HRV, resting heart rate, and sleep. And maybe once a month, connect these trends to your actual life, your training blocks, your travel, your caffeine habits, and your mood. That cadence keeps you learning without obsessing. And make sure you define boundaries as well. Decide in advance which metrics you'll act on and which you'll simply observe. Maybe you act on HRV and total sleep time, but you only watch temperature and respiratory rate. That one decision will help you eliminate analysis paralysis. Then you want to close the loop. Whatever your system is, your AI assistant, a spreadsheet, or even a simple journal, make sure every week includes the same 4 steps. Input, insight, action, and feedback. That's how wearables become a coaching tool instead of a scoreboard. With that frame in mind, let's build a protocol that grows with you. For the first 4 weeks, keep it simple. Wear your device around the clock, charge it on a schedule, and don't chase numbers. Each morning, note sleep hours, recovery or readiness, and whether your HRV trends upward or downward. Once a week, choose one behavior to tweak. Earlier bedtime, less afternoon caffeine, more water, a shorter evening screen window. By the end of the month, you'll have a habit loop most people never establish. From weeks 5 to 12, move from awareness to pattern recognition. Maybe add an additional signal source and tag behaviors that shape recovery, like your caffeine timing, your alcohol consumption, exercise, sauna, travel, and bedtime. Then ask maybe once a week, which pattern repeated? Maybe wine knocks your HRV down 15%. Maybe 2 sauna sessions a week lifts your recovery and your deep sleep. Visualize those links in your app exports or a simple chart. And after week 12, you're ready for automation. This is where AI turns dashboards into a single sentence. Centralize your data and ask your AI assistant to summarize the week. What rose, what fell, what likely drove the change, and what single action you should take next. In seconds, you'll get a headline. Maybe it says HRV down 9%, deep sleep down half an hour, strain high, likely under-recovered. Pull back training 20% and push hydration and earlier bedtimes for 3 nights. That one line replaces a dozen graphs and a foggy morning. I go into detail on setting up data automation for your AI longevity agent in episode 2 if you'd like to deep dive into it. At the end of the week, log whether you followed the recommendation. If you did, notice the effect. If you didn't, notice the friction. Over time, the machine becomes a translator, turning biology into clear requests your schedule can honor. If you want a deeper layer, add quarterly labs to the same sheet and ask whether your biometrics relate to fasting glucose, lipids, or hormones. Use those insights with your clinicians. This is where fitness tracker becomes preventative health companion in the best possible way. And you don't need many metrics to run a precision recovery system. In my opinion, 5 will carry you far. HRV as a 7-day average to reflect nervous system flexibility, resting heart rate to capture adaptation and fatigue, sleep duration and efficiency to quantify the depth of recovery, temperature deviations to flag any circadian drift or early illness, and respiratory rate as a quiet stability check. The secret isn't collecting more. It's noticing when changes happen. A 10% drop in HRV or a 5-beat rise in resting heart rate deserves your attention. A single rough night's sleep does not. Truth lies in the trend line. And all tools carry failure modes, so let's neutralize the common ones. Data overload turns curiosity into stress. Solve it by letting AI summarize and by consolidating your view into a single weekly digest. Over-identifying with the score can sour your morning. Zoom out to moving averages and let variability be normal. Ignoring context makes you expect perfection even while jet-lagged. Tag confounding variables so numbers become coaching, not criticism. And treating this data like diagnostics invites panic. Remember which features are cleared for clinical screening and which are for guidance only. And finally, pressure creeps in when you mistake tracking for achievement. The reframe is again simple. You're not trying to score 100, you're trying to recover faster. Here's how my own routine plays out. In the morning, I check Whoop recovery and Aura readiness. If both are green, I train fully. If one drops to yellow, I adjust volume or shift to a zone 2 training for that day. If both are red, I move the workout or make it restorative. Then I look at 8 Sleep's overnight report to see how the night aligns with how I felt when I woke up. At 7 a.m. every morning, my AI assistant sends a one-line digest that merges all 3 systems. For example, HRV up 7%, deep sleep up half an hour, recovery 82%, strain neutral, temperature stable, maintain the current load. That sentence replaces 5 minutes of dashboard hopping. If resistance training is pushing my heart rate above my target zones, I make sure that I rest longer. On heavy work days, I've noticed how mental load shows up physiologically. Back-to-back meetings can drop my HRV just like a hard run would. And that's not a failure. It's a cue to breathe and reset. In the evening, I make note of my context for the day. Travel day, light dinner, sauna 20 minutes, and then I let 8 Sleep manage the temperature of my bed while my brain powers down. A few patterns that I've seen have rewired my habits. Coffee after 3 p.m. consistently cut my REM sleep, even when my total sleep stayed the same. Switching to decaf after 1 p.m. restored my REM sleep, and I've also noticed improved morning cognition with that change. Sauna 3 nights a week lifted my rolling HRV baseline within a month, and both Whoop and 8 Sleep showed faster overnight heart rate recovery. Late meals were a bit sneaky. Eating within an hour of bedtime kept my heart rate elevated and shaved points off of my readiness for the next day. My personal cutoff now is 7:30 in the evening. And of course, travel predictably dropped my HRV and spiked my resting heart rate. The biggest surprise of all was emotional stress. A week of high-stakes presentation cratered my recovery despite minimal training. The numbers told the truth that my calendar hid, and I rebuilt my schedule with a little bit more breathing room after 4 p.m. People often ask me what I do when my devices disagree. Maybe Whoop says yellow and Aura says green. I treat it like a conversation. If Whoop's strain and 8 Sleep respiration both hint at fatigue, I trust that signal. If Aura says that I'm ready to train, yet I feel flat, I trust my body. Convergence builds confidence and divergence invites curiosity. I've been doing this consistently and have seen an incredible improvement in the past year. But it always wasn't that balanced. Early on, I let the scores run the show. Green meant I pushed way too hard, and red meant guilt. The reset was hard but simple. I stopped checking every single moment that I had, and I stopped chasing those perfect 3 rings in my app. I wrote how I felt before I looked at any metric, and most days, the data agreed with my perception. And on days it didn't, I learned something useful. Tracking by itself is observation. Stacking it with intention is where the value accumulates. What I've learned is that consistency beats precision. Imperfect sensors still reveal real patterns when you show up daily. One number rarely holds the whole story. Readiness, HRV, and sleep form a triangle you should see together. And curiosity outperforms control. Treat each week like an experiment. And value compounds over time. The longer you track, the richer your baseline and the more meaningful small shifts become. And the most advanced system is the simplest one that you'll actually use. For me, that's Whoop, Aura, and 8 Sleep stitched together by AI, reviewed weekly, acted on daily. So why keep wearing them? Because they don't promise immortality, they deliver awareness. Whoop doesn't lower my blood pressure. It shows me when my stress is winning. Aura doesn't make me sleep. It reveals when I sabotage rest. And 8 Sleep doesn't heal fatigue, but it does show when recovery is actually happening. The benefit is as psychological as it is physical. The small act of checking, reflecting, and adjusting keeps me engaged in my own longevity journey. And ironically, the more I understand the data, the less I need to stare at it. Once you internalize what good recovery feels like, the numbers just confirm what your body already knows. So let's wrap up by answering the 3 questions we opened with. How do biometric trackers measure, and are they accurate? They use light, motion, temperature, and heart rhythm to estimate physiological responses. PPG tracks pulse waves, accelerometers capture movement, temperature sensors reflect circadian patterns. Some devices add single-lead ECG for rhythm checks. Accuracy today is excellent for resting heart rate, strong for HRV trends and sleep duration, and fair for sleep staging. Rhythm screening features like Apple Watch's ECG and Whoop's heart screener are cleared by the FDA, but everything else, readiness, recovery, and cuffless blood pressure, is wellness grade. How do you use them effectively? By flipping the relationship so that the device works for you. Start with one tracker and one anchor metric. Review daily direction, weekly patterns, and monthly correlations. Let AIs compress complexity into a single sentence of context and a single next action. Make a micro adjustment. Lighter training, earlier bedtime, better hydration, and notice the feedback. That loop is the whole game. And lastly, do these devices create accountability or pressure? That depends on the mindset. If you treat data as grades, you'll feel judged. If you treat it as feedback, you'll be free. Red days become messages, not failures. And green days become celebrations of adaptation, not trophies. Over time, the mindset builds resilience instead of anxiety. The bigger picture is simple. Health isn't about perfect data. It's pattern recognition and gentle course correction. Biometric trackers make the invisible visible. They give you continuous context, show how your choices ripple through physiology, and turn long-term health into a daily learnable skill. And that's why they belong in your longevity toolkit, not because they're perfect, but because they keep you engaged. If today reframed your relationship with the numbers, share this with a friend and start a 2-week mini challenge together. Select one signal, compare notes, and talk about what you learned. Awareness grows faster in good company. Here's to more rest, better recovery, and always more years well lived. Thank you for spending your time with me today on Adding Years, your roadmap to longevity. If you found this episode helpful, please follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and consider leaving a review. Before we wrap up, a quick but important reminder. Adding Years is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health regimen, supplements, or exercise routine. What you hear on this show reflects personal opinions, experiences, and not medical advice. I'm Josie, and this is Adding Years. Until next time, here's to living better, longer.